How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I've got a very special guest for you all. Today, I'm joined by a strength coach. He's a powerlifter. He's a gym owner. He's a doctor, multi-talented, some may say. Today, I am joined by the one and only Adam Sawyers. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much. How about yourself?
I'm not so bad, thank you. I've purposely had the aircon on for majority of the afternoon, ready for this, but it's hopefully getting a little bit cooler. But I suppose the first question is, how have you been getting on? What's kind of been happening in your world recently?
Well, I guess it depends on how far you want to go backwards. So, despite everything you just said, I tore both my quads last March. So, March 24. It's September 25 now. So, that's been taking up quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
Um, so, been rehabbing that. And then at the minute, business wise, I've just started essentially like an online member site where I've decided to just put everything I know about everything all in one place instead of making it just one thing. So time's just been spent on that.
Yeah, nice. And I suppose because obviously I did say about about your injury.
Mm.
How was that kind of, this might be a bit of a tangent or a huge tangent, but how has that kind of been recovering? How has that kind of, because obviously um there's a positive there in terms of what you're doing business wise, but how has kind of it been the last year or so, rehabbing that, balancing that with business, and kind of like progressing with that.
I mean, it depends on how much of a tangent you want me to go on. There's all sort of, we'll probably just talk about that for an hour. So for some context behind the injury, I guess. So a couple of years ago, we'd go in the gym. So we had it was essentially a personal training gym. So all we did was small group training, and we got to the point of where the gym was doing very well. And then we kind of made the decision of like, it was just myself and my partner running it. Do we want to be able to have any time off? As silly as that sounds, this will be relevant. And sort of a few years, nice job, and everyone like, we want to be able to go on holiday. That was essentially the thing. We then decided to hire coaches and just train them up and everything else. So everything was going quite well. We went on holiday to Mexico for 3 weeks, and in that time, the gym kept growing and kept doing really well. I'm like, this is fantastic, kind of like living the dream, if you like. During that time on holiday, and prior to that, um, my partner had noticed how much I was snoring, and for some further backstory, I did judo growing up, so my nose has been broken so many times. I've had like 4 operations on it, something ridiculous like that. Anyway, we get back from that period, and within like a week or so, my partner's mum, she had a stroke. That led to all sorts of issues and stuff. She's on the road to recovery now. She's not fine, but anyway, so that set off a trajectory of different things. So my partner, she then was ended up commuting about an hour and a half every day to the hospital. So previously, she'd been running like the day-to-day of the gym. I was overseeing the big picture side of the gym. At that time as well, my online stuff, I'd started getting busier and busier and busier, which is obviously not a bad thing. And then I went and got a sleep test done. So at the time when we went away to Mexico, I was like 80, 82 kilos or something like that. Very, very lean. Um, and we come back, similar sort of weight, got this sleep test done, really bad results essentially. I tried all sorts of stuff over the years to fix it. I got a CPAP machine, and the first day I used that machine, I woke up the next day and it was like the world was in HD. It's like just night and day difference. Anyway, over literally the next 10 weeks, I gained about 8 kilos and didn't really get much fatter. I was natural at the time as well. So I wasn't using it. It was literally just so much of a difference how much of a difference sleep makes. Now at the time, so ignoring what I'd done when I was much younger, at the time my top squat was about 220-ish. Over the next sort of 7, 8 months, I went from that 220 squat to 270 squat, 272 squat. So this is like up to the November of that same year. During this time period, I was essentially running the gym, the day to day. The online stuff's taken off, so spending a lot of time on that. And then training is going incredible because I've got this extra boost of recovery.
Yeah.
One of the first early warning signs was I realized that I couldn't do sumo deadlift and squats in the same training week, both heavy, because I kept getting a niggle in my adductor. And it's just not a big deal. It's like, fine, I'll just pull conventional, no big deal. And this is only in hindsight that I can spot this because at the time nothing ever seemed that bad. Get the odd niggles in my knees. It's fine. It's fine because the weights are going up and up and up and up. Anyway, so the November, I compete. I got a 272 squat. I've gained like 7, 8, 9 kilos in body weight or something as well. So like looking back, it's like it's a lot, a lot of progress, probably a bit recklessly, plus not sleeping very well and everything else and managing all the other stuff. We then moved house as well, so there's an extra added stress on top of that. So we've gone from me training in the gym that I own, like relatively low stress environment for training and everything. I would block out 3 hours on an afternoon where no clients, nothing else, just for training. So warm up, training, everything else. We moved to a new house. A couple of days later, the house flooded, all sorts of stuff, to now training in a freezing cold garage instead. Which again, hindsight, it's like maybe not the best thing. Um, kept training, kept progressing, kept getting little niggles, but just in random spots. You know, a bit of a pull here, a bit of a pull there, but like my training and whatnot was kind of on the back burner, but still progressing so well. And I suspect I'm still riding the high of the sleep apnea and whatnot. So then come around time for the competition. About 1 week before I competed, so this is now we're into like March of 24. I squatted a 280 single, and based on the speed of that, like so I use a lot of velocity in training. Like, based on the speed of that, the 300 to 310 is on for the competition day. So everything's going really well. Thinking like planned numbers would be like around the 300 mark, 175-ish for bench, and then deadlift, whatever the minimum is I need to do to get to a 700 total, which is a nice round number. Go to the competition, everything's going really well. And then first attempt to, I think it was 260, is like an empty bar. Next attempt to go to 285, which from the outside looking in, it might look like a big jump, but those are the kinds of jumps I would have normally made.
Yeah.
I can remember going up to the bar and I felt like I could run through a wall, like just, like the adrenaline high.
Yeah.
Um, I also had on the new super stiff knee sleeves, the what they call it, the rigor mortis ones,
Oh yeah,
which I had
from
used
A7,
in the
yeah.
training block prior. Yeah, so I go up for the 285. I unracked it, and it's like a silly thing, but like, do you know you can lift it? You're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I got this. This is easy. I had that feeling. Next thing you know, I go down, snap, snap, both quads, feel unzipping, and like immediately knew that I'd snapped my quads. Like there was no confusion or anything like that. I've not even answered your question yet. Um, so anyway, all of that had happened. At this point now, I've been commuting backwards and forwards from where we'd moved to, it's like an hour and a half away to the gym for running it. And my partner, she wasn't doing that side of things. She was essentially just here now. So now we've got this situation where I'm in the hospital. I can't walk, I can't stand up, and I then have the surgery. I'm on morphine as well, so my brain doesn't work. And like it was the first time you take it, it's like, oh, feel a bit floopy, feel a bit quite good. After the first time, this is terrible. You just feel like a zombie. Your brain doesn't work, it causes all sorts of other issues. And so we made the decision then to salvage him. So that was a big part of it. So this whole time of being in the hospital, I think I was in for about 6 weeks in total. There was all sorts of mismanagement and stuff, but that's a whole other story. Um, my partner, she basically orchestrated and managed to deal with selling of the gym and everything else, like from a distance. So that meant that that one big stress, and when I say stress, I don't necessarily mean negative, because everything is a stress. It could be negative, positive, whatever. That was taken away. So that was a huge, huge thing, which I think really helped of not having to be concerned about not just running the gym, but making sure we're running the gym and supporting the staff and making sure they've got enough wages and everything else that they need, and obviously supporting the clients and stuff as well. So that happened, come out of the hospital, come home, and then just started the rehab stuff. And through the whole time, obviously my online clients, they're all awesome. And so still working with them. I plan things a lot ahead. So nobody was like left with like, oh no, what is it I've got to do? I can remember what we would do in hospital is once or twice a week, you'd be like, right, I'm going to skip a couple of morphine doses and Rachel would be there on my laptop and she'd be like, right, this client's program, this, and it'd just be like, just try and ignore the pain to answer the questions so she can type the things up just a couple of times for the first few weeks to get through it. So then after that, it meant that it freed up essentially a full-time job's worth of stuff, which is why I mentioned about the gym. On top of that, then Rachel's mum then had come home, so that freed up her time as well. So again, it gave us more and more time back. So I just took it as my new job is to rehab, is to get better, essentially. So the whole rehab time, it was not a case of if I can rehab, it's just you get on with it and you just do it. Fortunately or unfortunately, so at the gym, I have a master's in clinical exercise science as well. So I've done a lot of rehab stuff. Quite a lot of farmers actually with torn quads where they've slipped on the ice or something like that. So I had rehabbed it, but in a very different population. So generally speaking, older, not as active. So I essentially was like, I just want to do so much. I want to control as much as I can to make it completely unreasonable that I wouldn't rehab. So then the whole process was just, it was very methodical of like, there was a point where I was doing rehab on the hour, every hour from when I woke up, just to try and make it go as fast as possible. I joined like a quad repair Facebook group. I left after about 3 days because it was just people that wanted to use that as an excuse and as a reason. It was just somewhere for people to moan, I think, rather than to use it as a rehab. So I kind of used all of that stuff as like motivation to like I don't want to be like these people. It sucks. I'm sorry for those people, but I don't want to be that person. Like I'm 32 now, so I was 31 at the time. It's like I can't be done at 31. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, then the rehab, it's just been lots of the same stuff. Real boring. So like the session that I did yesterday, the rehab stuff, is almost identical to the exact same thing I would have been doing a year ago, except it's a lot heavier now. And
Yeah.
like it's just I've done so many isometric holds, like a disgusting amount of holds. I'm talking like 20 minutes, two, three, four times a day, every day. And it's not like slightly inconvenient. It's just painful. And I think it changes your perspective on everything. So then like even when I'm coaching clients and whatnot, I have to remember to try and still be empathetic, but it changes your um, benchmark for what's considered hard and not hard. There's no like individual thing, especially in powerlifting, that is difficult. The difficult thing is doing all of the things consistently and doing them like as well as you can and being treating it with like just as much enthusiasm as if it was a big, hard, exciting single or something, but doing that on all the boring stuff. So I basically have just taken all of that and then tried to just keep setting a good example to my athletes to be like, I mean, no one complains about doing split squats or anything like that anymore. But like, so it's all of that is kind of been like the external pressure, which doesn't actually exist, but it's in my own mind of I'm supposed to be this person from the health perspective, the rehab perspective, and everything else. And like I have to make sure I recover and do better. And then the internal thing of like this can't be it. Like I've always done physical stuff and can't be like I can't be that guy I used to be able to like nah, just didn't like that. So I think that's like it kind of catches up to more recent, and then it's only in the past. So I competed in a powerlifting competition last December, so that'll be like 8, 9 months post-op or something like that. So for reference, the recovery is supposed to be about 2 years. I didn't do anything crazy. I squatted like 60 kilos and I deadlifted like 220 or something like that. But I did that so that I could just be like, it's my decision if I never compete again. I have competed. That was kind of like, that was the only mental thing I had. If I was like, I'm not going to let that be the last time I can compete. It's my decision to do that.
Yeah.
And then it's only in the last sort of month or so I've actually started doing more squats regularly. And now I just have weak quads, relatively speaking. So it's just give it time. I just treat it as if like my legs are that of somebody who's been training for 6 months rather than that of somebody who's been training for 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what you said there, using it as an example and not being that, not using it as a as an excuse, like what you mentioned in that Facebook page, because I think stuff like that can just kind of eat at you, as opposed to being like, look, use it for, and as well, like what you said there about the research done on farmers slipping on that. It's kind of sometimes I'm always that thought of you want to. It's either you gain experience or like you gain knowledge from it or learn from it. Whether those two things are the same, I've just said the same thing. But you can take it from there and then apply that to your coaching, apply that to your business, and go from there. And I suppose kind of one of the first topics that obviously I sent over was you've said there you've been you did the same session a year ago. It's just a little bit more load, and especially for powerlifters, anyone doing strength training, the basics, the fundamentals get spoken about quite a lot. And this is a conversation that I've had quite a lot over the last couple of weeks from people that I've just bumped into in the gyms over here speaking to clients, and they kind of get lost along the way. But sometimes you either how I described it is like a crop circle. You end up actually coming back to them at some point. What do the basics look like to you? What do the basics done better look like to you? And why is it such a challenge for people to get them done? I know that's kind of like a triple whammy of what I've thrown at you there, but does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, so first, I'll give you a bit more background as well. So the way that I had run my online business for a large part is so with everything, I like numbers, I like objectivity, I like feelings and stuff are important, but I like observable actions. I like things where I can see something has or hasn't been done, whatever that is. Um, so with that said, with my business, what I tend to do is I will run something like ads or organic or whatever to a free course of some description. During that free course, I took it as if I wanted to take somebody on as a client, what is the minimum stuff I want them to know so that they could be a client, and also what would help them moving forwards. So during the course of that, say 100 people do it, 99 of them are going to get some really useful value that they can take and go on with their training. Fantastic. At the end, I then am like, right, for those of you that want to work with me directly, um, here's your choices. And so on average, say 1 to 3 people might then sign up. Now, the program that I have sold, or the naming of the whole thing the entire time, is basics but better. So I don't know if you can see that, but
Yeah,
I've had that engraved on my AirPod case for about 8 years. And it's because the entire time of everything I've done physically, so judo and whatnot, is in everything, there's just the basic stuff that you have to do. And then my approach is I want to do all of those basic things to the best of my ability, which is often quite boring. But that but better bit is like I think that's the important caveat. So just to go into that, what I look at with people is there are 6 or 7 things that you can control to make progress yourself. With them, there's training, nutrition, sleep, recovery, your mindset, and your health. The seventh one would be pharmacology if somebody is untested. So within that, what I want people to do is to move away from a -10 to a zero first, and then from a zero, we want to get up to a 10. And when I say the minus numbers, I mean anything that's negatively going to impact any of the other factors. So, like, say the health one, for example, if you have torn quads, that is a -10. You can't train. So, like, my first thing with anybody, with any of the basics, is in every single one of those domains, I want to get rid of any negatives, anything that's actively decreasing you from reaching your goal. So we look at that with all of these basics, and then that multiplied by the training effect, because without training, you aren't going to progress in powerlifting. So that's kind of like as a given. But if you can increase everything to a zero, you will get so much more out of that than you will from going from a 9 to a 10. So with powerlifting as the example, he said like, what are the basics? So if we go with training for powerlifting, A minus number for powerlifting would be your skipping sessions. You're not going to the gym. You've got technique that causes you actual pain. So, like with technique, for example, is it inherently safe? And by that, I don't mean like, have you got a perfectly neutral spine or whatever? I mean, like, you're not just doing stupid stuff. Like, I don't know, are you squatting with a bar that's rated to 100 kilos and you're squatting 200 kilos? That's just dumb. Like, that's not inherently safe. Is it consistent? So you're doing the same thing again and again and again. Is it repeatable? And then the pain side of things. So understanding the difference between pain and discomfort is part of the training one. The training effect is uncomfortable, but pain shouldn't be there. Then that would be like a minus 10. I mean, a bit further forward to like getting to a zero is, are you following some kind of progression? So obviously with powerlifting, generally speaking, we want more load on the bar, but it's so common that I'll get people and I'll ask them what program they're running or whatever. It's like, well, Monday I do chests, Tuesday I do squats. What program, not what split. So the next thing would be how your progression is built in. So big picture is adding more load over time. Then next we can to get into the zero is, are you training safe? And then are you training hard? Which the hard, again, is a thing that I think people misunderstand of, it's how close you are to failure is often a good proxy, but most people don't know where that actually is.
Yeah.
So I think with beginners, first it's that learn to train safe of just not doing stupid stuff, basically. The next one is the learn to train hard, which is a real simple way of doing that is take a machine-based exercise that has a fixed range of motion, so there's no ambiguity in it. Do a set where you think you got 2 or 3 reps left. Stop, rest 3, 4 minutes, do another set, and keep going until you physically can't move the machine. When you take a lot of beginners, so that it's in the data of like beginners underestimate their RP by about 11 reps or something stupid like
Yeah.
that. You need to learn what that is first. And then the next step, which is the final step, which is kind of like going from the zero upwards, is then learning to train smart. So that's where the more of a beginner you are, the more of everything will work. And it kind of like, I don't want to diminish training because it's important, but kind of doesn't matter. As long as you are consistent, you're not doing stupid stuff, you're adding more weight over time, you will get to a zero. That's the easy thing physically. Psychologically, there's all sorts of issues and other things and lifestyle and behavioral stuff, but just for the training. And then to get that above, your then window of the things that do work gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller to where like if you've got somebody who's like competing at the IPF World Championships, they could spend 6 months training and go backwards because although they were training safe, they were training hard, they weren't doing what was effective for them in their current phase. But so many people don't even get to that point because they're skipping sessions and they're not being consistent in their technique. And like so to me, the basic stuff is getting from that minus 10 to that zero first, and then we want to do it better. Do you want me to keep going through the others? Because
Yeah,
I'll just
no,
keep
I
going.
think I think that's a good explanation and a good way to look at it. I think from there, you mentioned a couple of things of skipping sessions, doing stupid things, and that's the whole or why I want to put more conversations out like this because even though those things which to me and you sound kind of well, yeah, that makes sense, but you still see people in the gym just absolutely either flogging themselves or putting too much weight on the bar and just doing things that are either it's going to get them injured or they're just it's only got a limited shelf life of how long they can do that but before something goes. And I suppose from the from you said there about how clients will sign up to you, work with you on a one-to-one basis, what are the biggest challenges that you see that clients say to you that actually, well, because there's got to be a reason why everybody does something. And what you've said there, obviously used about numbers, it's kind of like logical, methodical. There's a direction that you want to aim for. When clients come in who have maybe either worked with other coaches, have done something else, or I think the theme at the minute is chat GPTing what to do. What how do you approach that? How do you kind of because sometimes they'll have preconceived ideas, and I've had it before, whereas sometimes people have been doing something and they've actually got to a relatively okay level of strength, and you think, but you could get stronger. But in their mind, it's like, well, I'm already kind of strong. I just want, I want to focus on this. I want to focus on that. How do you kind of approach that when clients are coming in with those challenges?
So just as a side tangent of the AI stuff, I think AI is incredible at doing, but terrible at creating. And so the analogy that I like is if you imagine you're baking a cake, a sponge cake, you got like the first 80% is mix the ingredients, stick it in the cake. It's that last bit of the icing on the cake and the whatever ingredients and whatever that makes it the specific cake that you want. You can use GPT for the 80% and for the mixing and everything, but that extra bit to make it the cake that you actually want as an individual, it's rubbish. In a year's time, 2 years' time, 5 years' time, it might be amazing. But for right now, it's a tool just like other things, and everything's used lazily. And although we're talking about the basics, people don't put as much effort into the basics as they do the advanced stuff, which means that they don't need or deserve the advanced stuff. They need to just do the basic stuff. So the thing with the clients, I'm generally quite an extreme person in terms of my own goals of things. And so as I was growing up, I wanted to always be like, well, I could beat you at this. I could beat you at this. I could beat you at this. I would never want to actually say that to somebody, but I just wanted a list of proof. So if somebody questioned a thing, I'd be like, well, because of this, 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 and this. So for example, I'll have somebody, I had a guy who he's been with me about 18 months, but when he first signed up, he was talking to another coach and he was talking to myself, and I said, look, you should just go and work with this other coach. If the thing you're thinking about is you're just looking at the money side of things, because I'm slightly more expensive than most coaches, it's like you should go and work with him. Because if money's your priority, you don't need this stuff. You need this stuff down here. You need to train consistently, do all these other things regularly. About a month later, I come back. He was like, it was just a template. I got the same as everybody else. Yeah, because that coach is not actually coaching you. So they're not using the basics. So that's one is people have often had a bad experience. So if they've had a bad experience, then there isn't really much of a convincing because even just from the onboarding of getting a new client, they just see the difference. It's like if you walk into a McDonald's or you walk into a steakhouse, it's a very, very different environment. When one of the big challenges is when you get somebody who's already quite strong, and for them, it's a trust thing. So, despite everything I've just said, um, the psychology side of things I do find fascinating, but it's how you can apply it and it's the observable effect of it that I'm interested in. So, what I will do, it's a real common thing that I'll do is, so this is going to vary based on the level of the lifter, of course. So, let's take an example of three lifters. So, we'll have the beginner who's new to powerlifting, they love it, but not very strong. We'll take the person who's been training for a while, they're kind of strong. Maybe they've got like I don't know, 350, 400 dots or something like that. And there's somebody who's advanced. So they've got 400 plus and are looking to be like a world champion. The easiest one to deal with is a more advanced one because for them, they already know it takes time and they already know it takes work. And so for them, it's looking at refining what they're already doing. And I'm not like, let's just strip everything down. Like, what have you been doing? What are the easy things to fix? So kind of they're the easiest from a trust perspective because they know it takes time. The beginners, they're actually quite easy as well because they're beginners and they know they're beginners. So for them, it would just be a linear progression. Like week one, we're going to do this. It's going to be very easy. Don't worry about that. We're going to make it harder next week, and I'll just progress week on week on week until you get stuck. And for some beginners, that could be 6 months. They just keep making progress and progress and progress. And for them, that's the equivalent of like the 10 for training because you can't progress any faster. Like your body can't adapt any quicker than it can. There's physiology is limited. The difficult people are the people that have had some success. And so for them, what I tend to do is, unless they've got any events or something, I will give them essentially a peaking block from day one because they'll been doing some kind of training. They will hit PBs in the first 6 weeks. Like it's almost like clockwork of like you run a peaking block that makes sense based on what they've been doing. Like it's not random. They'll hit PBs like, oh, cool. And then I can sit down and be like, right, to get your next PBs, we need more time. We need to make sure everything else is in place. But it's that trust thing of when somebody had bought into the process. Because with all of the stuff, if somebody doesn't think it's going to work, it's not going to work. So it would basically just be what quick wins can I get somebody so that they can keep progressing. Now, if they've got an injury or something else like that, it might be like a technique change or whatever. But I want to do, it sounds you could take this as being lazy or as being efficient. I want to make the least possible changes to get somebody the most results from it because it makes it simpler and it means it's less things to focus on. And you'll have heard the phrase do less but better.
Yeah.
But I think it's not doing less, it's doing fewer things better. So there's fewer things you can do more of them. So like the basic stuff of your training, you're training more consistently. Like, as an example, if somebody comes to me and they're doing 12 exercises in a session, there's very few circumstances where that makes sense. So let's do fewer exercises so you can do more on the individual ones. You get a better, a more robust response, and we can go from there. So I think all of that it comes down to the trust side of things, which ties into like the mindset stuff of the person needs to be bought into the process anyway. Um, yeah, I keep ranting for ages about
No,
this.
no, I think that's really good because with that I can see how you it's a little bit when I start speaking you kind of see your train of thought goes where it is, and as I was nodding along there it's kind of two things came to mind is that you need to if you build that trust with a client they're more likely to be bought in when you say, right, we're going to focus on these things. Whereas actually, if you kind of come to like loggerheads against each other, it's a case of, well, you're probably going to run into more questions. Well, why am I supposed to do this? And it's kind of like, well, we want you to do this because this is going to help with X, Y, or Z. Whereas actually, like what you said there, going into a peaking block because it's that middle ground where people have had some success. All right, well, let's just see where you're at, and then once they're bought in, it's okay. Right, we're going to go into this, and then the other thing that you mentioned of doing fewer things. I'm on the side of it's more efficient rather than lazy because how my train of thought works is if you try and do five things, you're probably going to do a bang average job of doing five things. Where if I just give you one to two, maybe three things, you're probably going to be able to do them really well and exactly like what you said, do them consistently. Whereas that whole thought process of everybody thinks that more is better, whereas actually, is that on that same train of thought of efficiency, is that the most efficient way to work, or are you just kind of just adding more information in and not actually being able to pick out what's useful. So I think that makes real sense. One thing that I kind of wanted to touch on is um obviously I know we went through the kind of like the programming and getting that buy-in and the challenges from clients, but one thing that I kind of wanted to dig in a little bit was the health side of things because especially for yes, we're talking to powerlifters about powerlifters, but anyone who wants to get stronger, you could include strongmen in that, maybe even bodybuilders to a certain extent. I don't really know, but when we talk about health, the kind of an old way of thinking, if you like, is like, well, mass moves mass. I need to have a lie down after so many sets. I don't want to be doing any running. I just need to be walking around. Whereas, actually, you look at some of the top athletes within strength sports, is they actually. I don't know whether this is the right phrase, but they look like athletes. Do you know what I mean? They're looking at things outside of it, so they do look after their health. They do, focus on the nutrition and what when with the clients that you're working with, what are the health markers that you look at, and how do you kind of approach getting people stronger, but also having them healthy as well? And what does healthy actually, mean?
So, there's loads I could rant about with this. So the I think the first thing with all of this stuff is if any of the stuff that we talk about, you get a reaction to it and it makes you think, nah, that's not right, then that means it's probably something you should spend more time looking at yourself. So, like, people make the joke about powerlifters being fat and unfit and whatever. And it's true to a large extent, but it's true based on the population, not based on the elite. And most people think that they are the elite and they compare themselves to the elite. And it's not fair and it sucks. And whatever else you need to say that makes you feel better, fine, but that doesn't change the reality of the situation. So, this is a tangent and more related to the general population. This thing that people get real mad about, BMI. So people get so mad about BMI, and BMI is this and this, and it's wrong. It's not. BMI is just a number. That's like being mad at a centimeter. It's how you interpret what BMI is. That's the thing that's important. So it's the same thing with health. So if you were saying, for example, everybody has to have a BMI of X number, that's not true. If you say people who have a BMI in this range on a statistical average over time have this risk of this thing happening, that's true. That doesn't change the facts on a population level. Now, on an individual level, there are things that can change. So, on an individual level, there are different scores you can use medically to assess different risks of things. I'm not saying people need to go into the context of all of that, but what I think people often lack is a self-awareness of people like, oh, well, Johnny Wilkinson, the rugby player, he's got high BMI. And so, like, it's fine because look how healthy it is. If you are the powerlifter that's thinking that, but you can't see your toes, you are not carrying that much muscle mass that you are somebody where that's okay. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that everybody needs to aim for what's considered an ideal BMI, and for powerlifting especially, that would be counterproductive to the overall goal. I'm just using that as the example. So, just to bring it back sort of to health. So, health, the basic definition of health is absence of illness. So, that's just a very, very simple thing. So, we can look at that as an acute setting and a chronic setting. So, the acute thing, acute meaning short term, chronic meaning long term. So, there are common things that apply to powerlifters and strength athletes in both of those scenarios. And there's ones that people are aware of and happy to deal with, and there's ones that people like to turn a blind eye to. It's even worse in untested powerlifting, but it is still a thing tested. So the acute things are more orthopedic issues. So you've got pain in your elbows, pain in your shoulder. Pain is a very good proxy for that. So pain is one, and then sort of viral illnesses and colds and things like that. They can often be as a consequence of too much training and not enough recovery. So your body has to pull the recovery from somewhere. And people look at training and powerlifting as this isolated thing. But when we're looking at health, it's your whole body as an organism. So what I would like people to start doing, coaches and people, is first start off with you are a human. And all humans have the same basic needs. You need food, you need shelter, you need sleep. So that needs to be done first. Then, after you are a human, you can then be an athlete. All athletes have certain basic things they need to be able to do. Move your body, blah, 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 whatever. Then within being an athlete, you have a strength athlete. So a strength athlete and an endurance athlete, they both have the same basic needs of they both need to be able to train for their sport. They need the resources to train for their sport. They need to fuel it. But the specifics are going to be very, very different. And then within being a strength athlete, you then have powerlifting, strongman, CrossFit, kind of, if you want to count that as a strength sport, I guess it sort of is, weightlifting, all that sort of stuff. And then within that, you then get to the individual. So there is quite a few layers of complexity. And what people do is they look at the individual, like as a person, they look at the individual first and think it negates everything prior to that. And it doesn't. So it doesn't matter what your special circumstances or whatever are. If you don't sleep enough, you're not recovering as well as you could, regardless of how it makes you feel and whatever else. The same thing with the health. If you have an acute illness, you've got a cold, you run down, you've overtrained. It doesn't matter about how hard you grind and whatever else. So that's like a more insidious one. And so this is a something that all powerlifters and athletes and stuff should do. I'm going to sound like a crazy old man, but get some alcohol gel or something like that when you go to competitions. Make sure you use that like after attempts and stuff. The toilets, people don't wash their hands all the time. You're all using the same bars. There is an effect of where you're in a different population with people from all over the country. So that's like just a dead basic thing of like hygiene, which I didn't think I'd be talking about hygiene, but like it's a big thing. So hygiene is like one real simple thing. And then moving on to the more sort of chronic, insidious stuff, one that I bang on about all the time is blood pressure. And I've seen it happen. I've seen the consequences of it, obviously working in medicine and then being around powerlifting for it'll be coming up on 15 years now of people having strokes where you think they're healthy because they are powerlifting and stuff, but they're not checking their blood pressure. There's with your blood pressure, it's something like 80, don't quote me on the number, it's in the 80 something percent of hypertension, which is the definition of high blood pressure, which is called essential hypertension. And what that means is they don't have a clear specific cause for it. So there's not many cases where it's like, oh, your blood pressure is high because of this medication, this condition, this whatever. And it starts to happen younger than people think. And when you are training and pushing your body weights up and pushing your loads up, it's just more stress on your body on a whole and cause your blood pressure to go up. With modern life, as another tangent, people will bring up powerlifters from the 70s and 80s and whatever. Life was very different then. So people had lower overall stress, they had lower in certain circumstances, they had less total things to do, they had less things competing for attention. The economic situation was completely different. Like the whole thing is a different situation. So you can't compare you now to somebody 40 years ago. Have to look at your current environment. So the average stress is higher, and it means the stress on your body is higher, and it means the chance of having higher blood pressure is higher. Higher blood pressure, they call it the silent killer for a while, for a reason, sorry. It's because it takes time, but it's so easy to fix. And so it's like you can get a blood pressure monitor for like 15, £20 from Amazon. What I have my clients do is either once a month if they're not actively changing weight, so if they're not actively gaining or losing, or once a week if they are pursuing something like that, test your blood pressure. Do it on a morning before you've had any stimulants or anything like that. If it's in a healthy range, happy days, carry on. Nothing needs to change. It takes I think I put a video on Instagram and the entire reel is a minute of me checking my blood pressure, putting the strap on. So it's 1 minute out of your life. If it's on the higher side, measure it for a week. If it's still on the higher side, there are loads of things that you can do to try and fix it before you even get to medication. If you do have to have medication, it's not the end of the world, but it will be the end of your world if you have a stroke and die. And so like, it's a genuine thing. So that's one thing. But people just assume because they are athletes, even though they're not fulfilling the athlete bucket, that they're fine. They're not. The next big one is metabolic health. So when I talk about metabolic health, so metabolism is essentially the conversion of food to energy. So the common things with metabolic health are either problems with your gut, so gut dysfunction is a very broad term, or things like your blood sugar, and so pre-diabetes, that sort of stuff. So the gut dysfunction stuff, it's this is one that to me seems like common sense, but the more and more people I talk to, especially powerlifters, the more it becomes apparent it's things that people don't care about. So you'd see I've got Monster here, for example. And if you are somebody who you have a Monster and then it gives you violent diarrhea, you probably shouldn't have the Monster. But people don't put the two and two together of that's not a normal response to what's happening. So it could be that there's the caffeine in this, or it could be that you react badly to one of the sweeteners in it, or it could be that you've got something else going on, or you could be completely fine with it. Some people, it might be that they have gluten and they get a sensitivity type reaction. So not full on intolerance, but it just makes them feel sluggish and slow. Some people could be completely fine with it. But those individual things where in again an acute situation, you eat X and then Y happens. If you keep doing that, you have not learned and you are just making whatever the issue is worse. So if you use the pre-workout's a real common one. If you get diarrhea every time you have a pre-workout, like I just can't understand why you would keep doing it. Like it just doesn't make
Some people
sense.
might just enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's.
Well, yeah, I guess. And then the blood sugar thing is a far, far worse thing for, I actually think it's worse for natural powerlifters than it is for untested powerlifters. So it will be natural powerlifters that go in the mass moves mass idea, and they think that just getting heavier will be a linear increase in strength when it's not. Your body can only progress so fast, especially without extra enhancements, but your body can store fat almost at an unlimited rate because that's what it's designed to do from an evolutionary perspective. Your body doesn't want to starve, so it's really easy to store fat. It's really hard relatively to build muscle. So just by going too fast, your blood sugar is chronically elevated, which can lead to things like insulin resistant, pre-diabetes, which in your 20s, it's probably fine. In your 30s, still training, probably not too bad. In your 40s, it starts to become an issue. But also on top of that now, you've got the potential issues with the blood pressure. You've probably got more life stress because you're usually in a high position in work. You've got a family, you've got other things going on, other medical conditions, stuff going on. And it's just this big compounding effect. And then what you end up with is you are a big, fat, strong guy in the gym. Happy. When you're in the gym, fantastic. The second you step outside of the gym, you are now just a big fat guy. And you have almost all of the same issues as another big fat guy. Some of them will be offset by the training, don't get me wrong, but not all of them, because most powerlifters don't train with sufficient volume or intensity to get the cardiovascular adaptations that they think they're getting from training. And so that leads to them being in that position. And then what happens is they get hurt, they take time off, they whatever. And now you are no longer the big strong guy. You are now just overweight. You have a decent amount of muscle mass, which you're not using, which is more expensive on your body, which is again, it's more stress on your cardiovascular system as well. And you kind of end up with this like 46-year-old 120 powerlifter who's got like 192 kilo squat, a 160 bench, and a 212 deadlift, which like they're great lifts, but you didn't need to be 120 kilos to get there. You could have done that at 95 kilos, stayed healthy. It would have taken you a little bit longer, but instead you've ruined your health to get there, and now you need to lose all that weight, or you'll become one of those referees you sit at the competition who've got massive belly and they're supposed to be representing the sport, who have all these medical issues as a consequence of that, when it's all things that are entirely within your control through your training. So massive, massive rant. So the health side of things, I'm looking at things that are preventable from a chronic perspective, which are they're very similar to the same issues for the public, but powerlifters for some reason think they're special. And again, we'll look at the elites. You look at, let's take Russell Orhi, for example, absolutely jacked out of his mind and very lean. If you ever watch any of his training, he's very active. He's moving about a lot. He's not just do a rep, sit down for 10 minutes, do a rep, sit down for 10 minutes. He keeps a very low level of body fat. He's got a very high amount of muscle mass, and he's someone who controls his nutrition. If you are the person that has an office job and you do powerlifting 2, 3 hours, 2, 3 times a week, and you eat as if you are going to be that super heavyweight, you're in very different situations. And like if your top set on your squats is 180 kilo squat and his is 320 kilos or something, it's not the same stimulus, but people think it's the same, so they think they can get away with the same things. And then just to kind of bring it to a head, is that he is somebody who genetics is super super important. I don't think you should use it as a limiting belief, but I do think you should be realistic with it. You will know within your first sort of 4 to 5 years if you have the genetics to get to that kind of level. If you don't, then doing all the things that these people do is probably counterproductive for everything else in your life, and then you're going to be somebody that runs into other issues. Because as unfair as it is, if you don't have the genetics to be elite in that, you probably don't have the best genetics from a health perspective either. That's not to say like you can die early or whatever, but you probably don't. So therefore, it's even more of a risk if you're not inclined to be doing that sort of thing. And then it becomes the thing of where people just copy what they see other people doing. So like if you look at the super heavies, people will take what super heavyweights doing, like Jesus, Jesus, however you say it, and be like, I want to do that. Like he probably has 5 to 8 years of his career before he can't do that anymore. And like if you ever listen to him talk, he's talked about bringing his weight down. It's just a season of his life, which for him is worth it because he is the world champion. He'll be able to make financial decisions based off this. There's going to be long-term gain off of it. But if you are that 46-year-old powerlifter who's just got fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter, it just I don't know the what's the phrase? The juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
And I said that it's worse with the natural powerlifters, and part of that is because the untested powerlifters, at least the sensible ones, they do stay very lean because the anabolics obviously help them with that. So that does offset not all of it, but it does offset some of the issues that they have from that. I mean, they get all sorts of other different issues, but that's a whole other thing. Um, but so the health stuff is short term. Basically, things make you feel bad, don't do them. Like, why do bad thing when good thing make feel good? It's just a dumb thing. And then the chronic stuff, if I was like to summarize what to do, it's to monitor things like your blood pressure, your resting heart rate, and then just general blood work, I would get done once a year as a natural athlete. You can if you're in the UK, most GPs will let you just do a general bloods panel. They probably won't let you get things like your hormones tested, but your basic stuff, your liver function, kidney function, your red cell count, stuff like that, they'd let you test, and your diabetes markers as well. So it's HbA1c. It's essentially like a marker of how high your blood sugar has been over roughly the past 3 months. Um, you could do things like fasted blood glucose, but to be honest, I don't think that it's worth the time or the effort for most people. I don't know if you do like some very extreme situations, but the things that people can do without really any effort is resting heart rate, blood pressure, and you don't have to be like stage lean, but like if you look down and you can't see what's down there, probably worth getting a bit leaner.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah, I think
general overview.
the couple of things that were going through my head there is I'm not a big fan of energy drinks. The exact same thing happened. Like they do upset my stomach. I remember once when I was competing, the like van outside had stopped selling coffee, so the only thing that was left was energy drinks.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't even think I did half a can. And I just was like, I do not feel good. And I can't remember who said it, but yeah, if you eat weird things are going to happen. And if things
Yeah.
aren't happening, like, yeah, that's kind of like a good rule of thumb that I think people should live by. And as you were chatting there, and from as my head was thinking about it, because if you just take powerlifting, the amount of people that are actually getting involved in powerlifting, you can see that from competitions, the amount of people that are entering competitions with Sheffield. If you look at like the IPF, the Sheffield competition, even if you look at is it like the Abs Pro, which is like
Yeah.
the other one, like all these awesome events, and like the entry level really for people to start powerlifting is relatively low because there's been so much spoken about of the benefits of strength training. Everybody needs the strength training, whether you're young, old, in the middle, whatever it is, strength training is going to be beneficial. And do you think that from what you've said there that people kind of just think, well, I am doing this thing that's healthy, and then actually either whether it's they ignore or they just aren't getting the information about everything that you've mentioned there in terms of health markers.
I think it's willful ignorance because I think and also it depends on the age of the population as well. When you're 19, you're made of rubber bands and magic, and you don't care about anything like that. I mean, I know I was when I was that age. I could not care less. It's only obviously as times come on, as you get old, you start thinking about this and seeing these things happen more. Um, and I don't know. I think people go into it for different reasons, and so one of the things that I used to find almost a shame, but it was a good in a way. So what you will often see is somebody will start off with a personal training client, and so often a lot of personal training is women around menopause. So sort of 45 to 55-year-old women who get into strength training because they've heard of the benefits of it. Fantastic. Happy days. This is brilliant. So that was a large part of our client base at the gym. Now, what would happen is you would essentially take them from doing no kind of strength training and often no training. Sometimes they'd go for a run or something, and they would get linear increases in everything. So health benefits, mood benefits, comfort, everything would get better to a point. And then it's like when you take Deborah, who's 50, she's gone from weighing 80 kilos to now she weighs 60 kilos. So like metabolic health, fantastic, improved loads. And now she's gone from where she couldn't do a press up, so she can do 10 press ups. The increases in everything are like phenomenal. But now if we take her from being able to bench 40 kilos and get that to 60 kilos, that doesn't really change much from a health perspective. Like she's already in the upper percentile of muscle mass, and in normal life, if that's a thing, it doesn't make any difference. And then the stronger she gets, the less this is going to improve her health. And at this point, we're looking at like the 9 to a 10 of now she's specializing in powerlifting. And the more specialized you get in anything, the worse you kind of become at everything else, especially if you neglect it. So if you imagine you've got a straight line across the bottom, on one side you have a 1 rep max, on the other side you have a marathon, just as an extreme. So each of these, the further apart they are, the more interference there is. Now, people just think of it as this straight line. Instead, what I want you to do is on either side, draw a line up. So you've got like the three bottom lines of a square. If you are trying to get to the most advanced level of powerlifting, that's like the top of the line on the right hand side or left where the powerlifting is. If you also want to get to the top of the line on the marathon, you can't do that because the distance gets longer. If instead you're just trying to be overall well-rounded, you could have just a little spike on each. The distance between them is not very big, so you can be a decent powerlifter and a decent endurance athlete. If you apply that to health, you can apply that to all the different physical attributes. If you can be good across the board at all of your basic health metrics and quite good as a powerlifter, if you want to be the absolute best powerlifter, you probably aren't going to be able to do running in your training. It probably is going to be counterproductive. So if we bring it back to the example of Deborah, her everything gets better by getting stronger. But then when she goes from getting stronger for getting stronger to getting stronger to go from like that 80 kilo bench where she's got a decent arch to she's just maximizing that arch. Nothing against that. It's the rules of powerlifting, but she's not actually getting stronger there. She's getting more efficient. The extra time spent on that from a health perspective would probably be spent better on something else, whether it's her balance, her fitness, her coordination, her whatever else. And it's at that point at which I think people can they'll forget why they've started and the reasons. And it's great that they found a hobby, but then they can let their health slide in different ways and end up with different issues instead. And you just kind of swap in one obsession for another. And to be fair, the obsession of powerlifting, I like that. It's a good obsession. But if you go extreme in anything, you've got to sacrifice something somewhere. And it's that self-awareness thing of what that level is for you. And I get it kind of it's a bit contrary to what I was saying about like doing the basics and training hard, but you can still do that and be aware. So like for the hour that you're training, you can train super hard. But then there's the rest of your day where like, are you going for a walk? Are you doing any cardio? Are you eating like a grown-up? And are you sleeping well? Are you monitoring your stress? Are you all these other things? So I think with powerlifting, with the older crowd, they're usually, I think, getting into it from like a health perspective, which is awesome. Super happy about that. That's great. It's just being aware of keeping the goal. The goal is that you're doing powerlifting to improve your life. Your life isn't about powerlifting. For the younger crowd, the guys that are, guys and girls, teenagers, they might have the world champion aspirations, but I think for them, they don't see the bigger picture. And so if you look at a lot of the Eastern blocks for training, so like a place like Russia, the Soviets, when they have their training programs, even in China, they basically just do GPP for like 10 years or something first before they specialize. I think that's what a lot of people miss is that GPP. So GPP is general physical preparedness, which is essentially going to improve your health because you're just getting better at everything. A bit like CrossFit, but without the specifics of CrossFit, but like fitter, stronger, leaner, everything else. They're missing that. And so you see it when you go into a gym and you see the 58 kilo guy who's got the SBD belt and the wrist wraps and the knee sleeves. And what you're doing today, SBD. Like you just need to do 3 sets chest press to failure, do some curls, do that a couple of times a week first. Doing a fifth bench session a week is not going to help. You need to get bigger and stronger, but they're just hyper specialized in powerlifting, which means the health stuff gets neglected. They're not looking at the long-term development as an athlete, which, if you remember back to what we said about earlier of human first, then athlete. If you're not doing a long-term athlete, that means you're not looking at it as a long-term human perspective. And it doesn't help that you are getting more and more younger lifters that are at a higher and higher level. But what's often missing is you don't see that. So Elliot Sykes, I think's his name. He's like 17, 18 or something. It's like close to a world record. But he's been training since he was like 11 or something. So he's 7 years in, 7 years into this. And if you're starting at the same age and copying him, you're neglecting the foundations of being a powerlifter and the health stuff, because the health stuff is boring and people don't worry about it until it becomes an issue, or until you have a family, until you have kids, until you have, so you have someone like me that's going on about it so much, like it's important.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think yeah, it's awareness, self-awareness, and then also just I think age is a real big thing about it. People just don't think about it.
Yeah, I think from there it's kind of come to the end of like that sequence, if you like. I know obviously we mentioned starting off talking about basics, but there's levels to everything, and it's a case of like, look, it's where you fit into that, and things can
Yeah.
change and adjust. You can commit more time to it, you can take a step back from it, priorities change. It's like, right, well, actually, I've got kids now, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, or whatever it may be. So yeah, I thought there was quite a lot of good information and content in there. But the last question that I like to ask Adam is, from everything that we've spoken about today, for everyone listening, what would be your take home points or words of wisdom?
I think that one of the I think elimination is more important than addition in most things. And I don't just mean do less exercises. I mean do less things that are negative rather than trying to do more things that are positive. So just on the thing we were just talking about there of like the health stuff, the incidence of mortality, which is death essentially, is it's like 400 times worse or something like that in the bottom percentage of fitness than it is compared to the top percentage. It's like a 400 times difference. So if your fitness is that bad, you're 400 times more likely to die of anything. However, what people will do is instead of fixing that by doing 2 cardio sessions a week, they will instead be worrying about what supplements should I be taking, what different stance should I be doing, what different whatever. You you need to remove as many things as you can that aren't the thing to get you to your goal. One of those things is not dying. So 400% return for doing a couple of cardio sessions a week. So for anybody who's like a powerlifter and wants to like get the basic health stuff, 2 cardio sessions a week, real simple. If you eat things and it makes you feel bad, don't eat those things. Find something else instead and like pay attention to how your body feels and then eliminate everything that's not directly helping you with those things.
I think that's a good take home point, and a good kind of like summary of what we've spoken about. I think, yeah, because there's so much noise out there, it's kind of like, look, what's actually going to work, and maybe not just work, but what can you apply right now that, a little bit like what you said there, is going to give you a little bit more, a little bit more return. Because I think a lot of people, yeah, are looking for those magic formulas, or silver bullets, whereas actually a lot of things that we've spoken about, they can actually do right now,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense. Thanks a lot, Adam, for taking the time to jump on. Really appreciate it. If anyone's got any questions about what we've chatted about today, want to reach out to you, see the content that you put out there, where could people find you or reach out to you?
If you just Google Dr. Adam Sawyers, it'll come up somewhere. There'll be something. And just to add on to that last one, as an extreme example, but so I had a guy called Eddie, and he had a 330-ish kilo deadlift. And the biggest change we made, didn't change his program, didn't change anything else, was we got him to stop eating about 40 grams of protein and start eating about 200 grams of protein. Same program, everything else. 6 months later, he pulled 370. And like that is the prime example of the basic thing of like eat your protein. It's just the
Yeah,
basic thing. That's the extreme. That's your results may vary, obviously, but just do the basic stuff, you know.
yeah. No, that's it. You've said it now. Eat protein, deadlift 370. That's the
That's
thing.
it. Yeah, yeah.
No, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. Like I say, I thought some really useful content in there, and information. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.